Hey everybody, Joe Buzzello here for sellsource.com and Sell Radio and Video Podcast. We have a great guest on today, Mr. Chuck Farmer. Hey Chuck, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great, man. Good to see you this morning.
Good. I'm going to intro you in a second. Excited to have you here. If you're not part of the Sellsource On Demand .com program, please go over that. Go to sellsource.com. That's where all the good stuff is. But great guest today. We're going to talk a little bit about commitment as it applies to your new venture, getting started as a salesperson, an entrepreneur, maybe even a brand new leader. What's your commitment to the leadership role? So we're going to talk about commitment today. That's why I had this guy on. I invited this guy. Let me tell you a little bit about Chuck. Chuck and his wife, Ruth, they hail from the Nashville area. And he has a great history in business and in opening business. He actually opened hundreds of stores for a company called Cracker Barrel. He was an executive in the food and beverage industry, easy for me to say, for many years. And he shifted into the insurance industry, the industry that I came from. That's where I met this guy. And he's had a tremendous amount of success in the insurance industry as both a salesperson, but not just a salesperson, a direct sales, a B2B sales expert. And then he evolved into a trainer, but not really only a trainer, because training is one thing, but he's really evolved into a tremendous coach and even a higher calling than that, tremendous mentor for many, many people in his area now across the country. And so he holds a regional sales manager's position with a Fortune 500 company in the Memphis area. He's going to be splitting his time between Nashville and Memphis. So he is very much in demand for people that report to him and other people that just want a few minutes of his time. We're lucky enough to get a few minutes of his time. Also tell you that Chuck is a CAP Equation certified instructor, part of our growing team. And he's also soon to be co-author of Winning Sales Mindsets, a book that many of us, half a dozen, 8 of us are putting together, which will be out early next year. And he's also going to be a regular contributor to the sellsource.com platform and Sell Radio and Video Podcast. And so with that, I'm going to welcome you, Chuck. And you're in Northern California, and you did something very interesting on Saturday. You ran a Spartan race with your 2 sons. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, and I know you do a lot of this, you run a lot of Spartans, you run a lot of Tough Mudders over the years. Why in the world would you do that to yourself? That's my first question.
Yeah, great question. It's good to be here on this Thanksgiving week. But yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm a foodie. I love food. I know you do as well. And I'm a foodie. I love to eat. And as we travel and stuff, it's easy to find places to find good food. But I'd also like to enjoy being in good shape and do fun things with my 2 boys as they were growing up. But I found myself, the boys had left. I wasn't able to play basketball with them on a regular basis. I wasn't as motivated for a while. And I wanted to have something that I could do by myself that would inspire me and motivate me and keep me committed to staying in good shape. And I'd seen these Spartan races, and they were just getting big. And so I just, about this time of the year, several years ago, I signed up for a Spartan race for March. And I said, that's something that will keep me committed and dedicated to working out on a regular basis and at least watching what I eat some of the times. And so I'll never forget, I went to Atlanta, Georgia in March. It was a cold March in Atlanta. And the first obstacle I ever did by myself, didn't have any training, nobody do it with me. They had these 3 big old holes they dug in the ground full of water, and you had to climb in there and then jump out and climb mud. And I got out and I was cold and freezing and mud all over me, and I was hooked. I've been doing them for years since. And I just really love it because it takes commitment and energy and grit to continue to do these and do them well. And it's just a lot of fun. And then you get to travel and do them with your sons, and all those little extra things just makes it an exciting thing to do.
Big commitment. And of course, we're talking about commitment. You also 2 other words there, grit and energy. We're going to talk about grit in the coming months. We're going to talk a lot about where energy comes from. And I know you watch what you eat very carefully. I also watch what I eat very carefully. I watch it come onto my plate. I watch it go into my mouth. I watch it go right down to my belly. And I do not run Spartans or Tough Mudders yet, but I'm getting closer. You know, it's I went to see a doctor for the first time in a long time, a new primary doctor several months ago. And she said, "Are you on a diet?" I said, "I've never been on a diet." She said, "What do you eat?" And I told her. And she said, do you work out? I said, I've never been inside. Joe Buzzello's never been inside a gym. And she says, it's a wonder you're not 300 pounds. So I have a good metabolism for right now, but I've got to watch it. So let's talk about commitment. Now, let's talk about commitment. Let's talk about commitment from the perspective of being Chuck Farmer, from the perspective of being Joe Buzzello, someone who has hired like us, who have hired hundreds, if not thousands of people, or at least work with or come in contact with thousands of salespeople, new entrepreneurs, new solopreneurs. First and foremost, when I say the word commitment, what does that conjure up in your head? That just the word.
Well, I think a synonym that comes up for me is discipline. Commitment and discipline, and even further is grit, is that, being dedicated and doing the things it takes and whatever it is that you want to achieve. And that could be personal or work, obviously, and having something that you want to achieve and knowing that you've got to do certain things in order to get there. And so you've made your mind first that you're going to do those things, no matter what it takes. You're going to have to put aside some things or put aside some time to do the things it's going to take to be successful in that area.
So where does it start? Let's take that word commitment again. Let's go back to the genesis of it. And you said discipline, which I absolutely love. Where does a cold, hard decision come into play? Is a decision first that I'm going to do this? Or does that come first? Or do we start doing the work and say, oh, this is going pretty well. Now I'm going to make a decision to stay on this and stay disciplined. What happens there, at least in your mind?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I do interviews still on a very regular basis for the sales industry. And I tell people every week that I interview people that are in their early 20s, just graduated college with very little work experience. I had a guy just a week or two ago that was 68 years old and over 40 years of business experience, male, female, socioeconomic background. It really doesn't matter. They can all be successful in this business. But I tell them before I offer them the position, what I'm looking for is a commitment on their side that they've decided this is what they want, that they've looked at it and they've got a why, and they have decided that this business is what they want, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to make it be successful. I just think in your heart and your mind, it's just like going on a diet, for example, or losing weight or changing your lifestyle. You have to make that decision. You're going to do it, because once you get a week or two in and your muscles are sore and you're not eating good food that you really enjoy, you got to have made that decision earlier that you're committed to this end. And again, whether that's personal or business, I just really believe you've got to decide in your heart and mind for whatever reason that you're going to do it, no matter what it takes.
Yeah, it starts to me, it conjures up, your interview conjures up the Alec Baldwin scene in Glenn Ross, where he's imploring those guys to get off their rusty dusties, their butts, and make a decision for Christ. And he's imploring them to make a decision to move forward or hit the door. And so one of the things, all kidding aside though, you're really asking them, you're imploring them, if you want my mentorship, if you want my coaching, if you want to become part of our environment, our ultra successful environment. And I got to tell you, if you're watching this, almost everything this guy touches becomes more fun and more exciting and more successful. And there's no secret to that. The secret's in the work, the secret's in the dirt, like Ben Hogan said about golf when they asked him, many times he continued to tell people that the secret is in the dirt. You got to dig the secret out of the dirt. You got to do the work. You got to take the reps. You got to hit the golf balls on the range. So what you're actually doing is you're asking someone, you're employing someone to make a decision to do, and I heard that very clearly, and I hope you did too if you're listening, whatever it takes to do the work. That's a decision you're asking them to make before you make a commitment to them.
That's correct. It's exactly correct. Very important.
Let's go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's right. I was just going to say it's very important.
So let's talk about, from my perspective, from your perspective, I'm going to lean on you. I might be your color man for this, but let's talk about, on one hand, the characteristics you see of people that you believe are going to stick and stay, in the game of sales. It doesn't matter whether we're selling something inside of an organization or we're creating our own product and we're becoming a solopreneur or a brick and mortar entrepreneur. I want you to try to give us a quick outline of some of the characteristics you see of people that stick and stay. And not only stick and stay and survive, but thrive and become wealthy and develop wealth in sales and business ventures. And then on the other hand, after we're done with that, I'll ask you the same question, the flip side of the same question. What characteristics do you see when people, when we almost know up front those people are going to go bye-bye and crash and burn? So let's start with just a quick laundry list. What are some of the characteristics that you see, some of the things that you perceive and observe when you know you have a success on your hands, when you've hired someone and you say, that person's willing to run alongside of me, I have a success here waiting to happen?
It's just such a great question. And, you talk about how there's no secret sauce. And this is just a perfect example of that. You do many podcasts and write many books, and there's just many chapters of planning and preparation and doing sales. There's just a whole lot of details that you talk about in sales, which are all very important. But to me, the number one thing that proves to me that this person's going to make it or shows me that they possibly are not going to make it is simply this discipline and grit part of it. We talk to people all the time about how in sales, one of the advantages we have is we can control our schedule. That's a big benefit to people in the sales business. But it truly is a two-edged sword. And that a lot of people, once they get into this and they're not being told what time to get up and go to work and what time to clock out, they have freedom, they can't handle it. And so it's one thing to need help in certain areas, like presenting to a decision maker or doing an employee presentation. I can teach most people how to do that as long as they're determined and committed to, and they're willing to do those things. I'll never forget, just about a week or so ago, I had a presentation I was going to do at 6 o'clock in the morning for employees. It was going to be about an hour drive, so we're going to get up real early. But it was an opportunity to make some good money. I had a new person that I wanted to share some commissions with. I wanted them to observe me, learn from me presenting, and I was going to give them part of the commissions. And that they declined the offer to go with me. That right there is obviously a good sign on the one negative direction, the fact that they're probably not going to make it long term. That's an opportunity of a lifetime right there to observe and learn and make money, yet you're not willing to get out that early and to make that decision to be committed in that way. Versus other people that are telling you and are showing you on a regular basis that they're willing to go wherever, whenever, and learn and observe and be trained in this business.
So on the one hand, you're saying, hey, discipline, I'm taking notes on this. I want you to take notes as well, unless you're driving. Then please do not take notes. Keep your eyes on the road. But if you're stationary, discipline and grit, again, being willing to do whatever it takes. And that other example on the other side, the people that are not going to stick and stay, the people that are going to go bye-bye, whether they just fade away or we fire them, which sometimes happens. But on that other end, that's someone that you actually, let me get this straight, you offer them an opportunity to get up early and drive with you to an established account where business would be generated and they would share in the commission, and they said no.
Correct.
Okay. That has to be to me, it's mind-blowing. That has to, and you're in the game. I've been out of the game of managing people on a day-to-day basis for a few years, but to you, that has to be absolutely mind-blowing.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. And the thing is that is a extreme example, obviously, I think, in the sense that there's a lot of people that maybe aren't committed, but they would at least do that. And so it's not always that obvious. You'll have people that if you're going to make them money, they would show up maybe at least and do that part. So that's an extreme example, but that's just an example of how you can see in little ways how people are not as committed as they should be.
Well, I think about one example I was given when I was with Penn Life, and it was funny. I talk about Penn Life and the $39 accident policies. This was back in 1979 right. When I started in sales. I was 18 years old. And one of the first opportunities I was given was to leave the San Fernando Valley, a suburb of LA, just north of LA, and drive to Bakersfield, the Valley, and service some tickets, some overdue tickets. It was basically like a debit route, like Combined Insurance used to run.
Correct.
And a lot of people, I learned this later, a lot of people turned it down. I didn't turn it down. They handed me some overdue tickets. I took them. I put gas in my car. I put gas in my Oldsmobile, and I drove up the 5, up the 99 to places like Shafter, Wasco, McKittrick, these little 7 Standard Road, to all these little farms. And I think I renewed every ticket and added business to almost every ticket. And I got referrals to other farmers. And it was the best week of my life. And I stayed in a hotel, a very inexpensive hotel. I think it was a $29 a night hotel. And I didn't have a lot of money at the time. I ordered big submarine sandwiches and ate a third at a time because that's how I made it through the day. But I made a lot of money that week. And then I learned from my manager, Tom, that several others had turned down the opportunity. I had a great week. So to you, it's about just opening up. Really, a person could open up their mind, and before they say no, really assess what they're going to do that's going to be more productive than the opportunities that are being offered by their mentor or coach. I was always willing naturally to say yes to everything, which could be a problem, as we know, as you progress in business. But when you're brand new, I would say the reverse should be true. You should say yes to everything. You should gain all that experience. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, obviously you have to make educated decisions, and you are a businessman or a business person. So there's times to look at your return on investment, but overall your answer should be yes to start, and you should be willing to do whatever it takes. You know, my favorite definition of discipline, by the way, is doing what you need to do, whether you feel like it or not.
So write that down. You've said that before, and that's so noteworthy. Discipline is doing what you have to do, what you must do to move your business forward, whether you feel like it. And the important word is feel, whether you feel like it or not, because how many times do we succumb to our feelings? So you're doing a Spartan race or a Tough Mudder. How many times in the middle of that race, I wouldn't know, so I'm asking you, how many times in the middle of that race do you feel like quitting and walking off the course?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And it's a perfect example. This week, I didn't have that much. It was a great run. It wasn't very far, and it was in San Francisco in great weather. But every now and then I thought, hey, you know, why do I do this to myself? But several races I've run, I've gotten a mile or 2 or 3 in. I'm like, man, this is crazy. Why do I do this to myself? And you really have to go back to your why. Why is it that you're doing it? And that's when you got to have that solid why. And that's what I referred to earlier about the people that you're interviewing. When they come on board, I want them to have a why, because when times get tough and you don't want to move on, you got to look back and say, wait a minute, I came here to provide for my family. Because of, and that's what you really got to refer back to. And just this week in South Carolina, there was a Spartan race where there basically was a flood, and it was muddy and it was gross and nasty. And my sons and I were watching on video and on Twitter people talking about it and how many people did give up and how they just could not go on. And that's definitely something that we have in the sales business. Me and you probably still think that from time to time. Why are we doing this? Been in it 2 days or 20 years. There are times when you think, I need to get out of here, and you got to have that why to stick to.
Yeah, absolutely. I've launched a couple businesses over the last few years, and one of them is now becoming very successful, Advance AZ. And there were early moments. There are moments early in the progression of it where I thought, well, this may just not work. And why am I doing this? And I had some internal fortitude, some internal grit, and scripting that just wouldn't let me quit. And I had a wife who said, well, hey, let's revisit why we're doing this. So it goes back to the why. So discipline, grit, identifying the why. What other characteristics do you see when you know you have a winner in your midst on your hands?
You know, it's again, it's interesting. I tell the people that I'm interviewing that personality can help. But as you and I both know, we've seen many people that are extremely outgoing that are very successful in this business. But we've also seen a lot of people that when you meet them on a social basis or you spend time with them, they're not necessarily really outgoing. You see people that are older versus younger. You know, there's a lot of things with regard to your past experience. Like I opened Cracker Barrels and I travel a lot, and maybe me dealing with all those people helped me a little bit. So there's things in your past that can help you that you can maybe lean on. But I truly believe the things that I see that tell me this is a potential star in the making or somebody that's going to do very well in this business is that energy on top of the commitment, that desire. They're showing up for the meetings, but not only that, but they have a desire to learn. They have an energy about them. They're wanting to gain whatever you can give them. They're wanting to learn from you, and they are focused on learning about this business. And you just, you can't really write down just a complete checklist, but I think those are some of the things I look for in people besides the commitment is that energy, that focus, that wanting to learn that they have.
Okay, so there's a lot, we could unpack a lot there. We don't have the time today to do it on the short podcast, but energy, just having the energy. I love the term showing up. Showing up to do the work is very important to you and I. Right. That thirst for knowledge, thirst for learning. How much can I learn? How fast can I learn it? How fast can I become great at what I'm doing?
That's right.
And that focus on the task at hand. So let's flip over to the other side now. Let's get over to this other side, the characteristics, the things you hear, the actions you observe when you kind of know in your heart you're going to have a fireside chat with this man or woman and probably disinvite her from the business organization that you lead and you run. What does that look like? What do you hear? What do you see? What do you observe? It'd be interesting to note that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you start with obviously the opposite of the things we just talked about. Maybe a lack of energy, a lack of desire to learn. They're not approaching you and asking for help. They're not approaching you and asking for clarification on things that maybe you're training. And not only that, but they just don't have that focus and determination to finish what they've started. And I have this list that I use about professionals that I like to share with my team about we are sales professionals. And I talk about what are the things sales professionals do and what are the things sales professionals don't do. And one of my favorites is professionals don't whine. They don't whine. And I think one of the things that I see that really share with me pretty quickly that this somebody that may not make it is somebody who whines. It's one thing to come to me in a professional manner and say, hey, I'm not making the money I'd like to make. What can I do? How can I do a better job? Can you help me? Versus whining. And I think we all know the difference when we see it. And I think that's one of the characteristics that really show me very quickly this person's not going to make it.
Boy, do I hate whiners. Both hate whiners. Couple of closing thoughts. By the way, this has been good. We're gonna do more of this. As I said, Chuck is a CAP certified instructor. CAP Equation. That's my first book on Amazon. CAP Equation, a foolproof formula for unlimited success in sales. Winning Sales Mindsets is a sequel to CAP, which Chuck and a few other really talented CAP Equation certified instructors, CECI designation, are going to be part of. If you're interested in a future CECI designation, let me know. Jay Buzzello, Buzzello, Jay Buzzello at me.com. That's my shortest email address. And in a moment, Chuck, I'm going to ask you how people can get a hold of you. So prepare for that. But a couple of closing thoughts. Really, when you think about commitment, when you start to think about your takeaways from this podcast and from Chuck, I dare you to find any person that you've either coached, or if you're not a coach or trainer, that you've observed, a peer that is highly successful, that hasn't made a decision first and then acted with great discipline, stayed very focused. And something you said, Chuck, I want to also highlight that. Winners, real pros, hardcore killers, they're going to develop not just a living in business, in sales. People that develop wealth know how to cross the finish line. And they have a legacy of crossing the finish line. I'll throw this out to you just to get a reaction on it. Really our last thought before we close up. but how important is it just to have the mindset that I'm going to cross the finish line? I may not be first. I'm probably not going to be last, but I'm going to cross the finish line regardless of how muddy and bruised up I am. I'm going to make, at the very least, that commitment to do the work and finish the race, end the race. How important is that in the scheme of things?
Thank you, Joe. I think that's a great closing thought. And that's another reason I love doing the Spartan races and Tough Mudders. Not to belabor the point, but I love how it corresponds to the sales business. And at first people might think, what are you talking about? But it just corresponds so well about the commitment and doing what needs to be done, making the decision, deciding that no matter what, you're going to cross the finish line. And this Saturday was a perfect example. As you know, I've been extremely busy. We all are. It's Q4 and it's the holiday season upon us. It's just a busy time. And I wasn't as committed to this race as I have previous races. My first race of the year is usually in March or so. It gives me the first of the year to really focus. We're all really dedicated the first of the year. And so I focus, and my first race is usually my best because I'm more focused on it, committed. Well, guess what? This week I wasn't as focused and committed, and I didn't train as much as I usually do, and I was able to see the difference. And I didn't do as well as I'd hoped. And throughout the race, I could tell, and I was complaining to myself, why didn't I do a better job of training for this race? And so, first of all, I think people need to realize that you can tell the difference in sales. You can tell when you're not as committed, when you're not as prepared for a presentation, when you're not as prepared for a week as you should have been, when you're not as focused on coaching that person or that team as you should be. It does make a difference. It really does. If you're not as committed as you should have been and prepared as well, it does make a difference. And then again, I love the comparison here that if I'm not prepared and ready for a race, it makes a difference. It really does. On the other hand, Saturday, I told my boys in advance, I'm not as prepared as I should be, but I'm going to finish this race and I'm going to do the absolute best I can. And so there was no question that I was going to run the race. I wasn't going to show up and tell my boys, hey, I'm not prepared, so I'm not going to run, or I'm not going to get halfway through it and then decide if I'm going to finish it or not. I came here to run this race and to finish it and to do my best. And again, you have to have decided that before I started. I couldn't wait and get halfway through because then it'd be real easy to say, man, this hurts. I'm not prepared. You know, it'd be easy to quit and say, hey, I wasn't prepared. I can just quit. You have to decide in advance that no matter what comes about, I'm going to finish this race. And I think in sales, that's so true. Me and you both, the example you just gave, I have examples like that as well, where wasn't making as much money as I'd like, you know, not making the money coming in, but I knew this is where I wanted to be. Where I'm sitting today is where I wanted to be. And I was going to do whatever it took to be there. And I just think that commitment in advance in your mind and heart is what it's going to take. And you're going to have down days and down weeks and maybe even down years, but you just got to be focused on finishing the race no matter what.
I think we'll leave it there. That's beautiful. You're building a great organization and a team for a Fortune 500 company. You also coach and train people. You also speak. You're a great, I don't want to say motivational speaker because motivation to me and to you is an internal job. You inspire people to find their internal motivation. You're an inspiration to many, many people in sales and sales leadership. If someone wants to get a hold of you, they could always go to our site, SellSource, SELsource.com, and go to partners and find your profile. But how would they reach you directly?
Great. They can email me at my email at chuck.farmer007@gmail. I'm a big James Bond fan, so all you got to remember is Chuck Farmer and James Bond. So chuck.farmer007@gmail, or feel free to even give me a call. This is a great group of people I'd love to share with you and talk with you. My phone number is 615-417-0611. That's 615-417-0611. And look forward to hearing from anybody who'd like to share with me.
Well, I got to tell you about this guy. Not only does he know a good hamburger, he'll also take you for, if you become friends with him, he'll take you for a good hamburger at 10 at night, which causes massive indigestion.
That's right.
But also it's good for a few laughs and a lot of wisdom. One of the most talented, Chuck, I mean this sincerely, you're one of the most talented salespeople inspirational speakers and leaders that I know. Thanks for being part of the CellSource platform, the CAP Equation Certified Instructor team. We're going to sign off. We're going to wish everyone a great week and a restful weekend. This is coming to you. This has been recorded just a few days before Thanksgiving. You may listen to it sometime in the future, but those of you that are listening to it fresh, have a wonderful and a blessed Thanksgiving. We'll talk to y'all later. Thank you, Chuck. Take care, buddy.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.